let's jump right into this explainer, shall we? We are unpacking a truly wild, paradigm-shifting idea today. We're looking at this massive, monumental transition from our current era of extraction to a completely new, emerging stellar civilization. And look, this isn't just about cool new gadgets, it is a total ground-up transformation of how humanity actually operates. Now, if you've been feeling that collective anxiety lately, that sinking feeling that our current systems are incredibly unstable and just verging on collapse, well, the data actually says that feeling is absolutely justified. Our 10,000-year reliance on extraction, it's hitting a wall. It is reaching its terminal end. So we really need to understand what extraction actually means in this context. The source material calls it the X-flow. It's basically a societal model completely hooked on the endless removal of resources. And this X-flow creates a mandatory demand for infinite growth on a finite planet, which leads to a pretty dark but eye-opening realization. Toxic outputs like extreme inequality, environmental destruction, even conflict and war, they aren't just accidents or bugs in the system. They are the direct, absolutely unavoidable features of the X-flow itself. The contrast between this dying extractive world and the new stellar world is literally night and day. Think about it. Extractive systems are completely rooted in scarcity. They are centralized, labor-intensive, and inherently toxic. But stellar systems, they're the exact opposite. They run on superabundance, zero toxic output. They're totally distributed, and maybe most importantly, they actually emancipate us from just being cogs or inputs in a massive production machine. Okay, so how does this practically work? Well, stellar technologies, think solar arrays, wind turbines, battery networks, they behave fundamentally differently. They act like stocks, not flows. You put a solar panel on your roof, right? It doesn't demand a daily delivery of coal to keep functioning. It just sits there and gives you electrons for decades. They are highly networked, totally scalable, and, this is wild, the traditional economic drivers of land, labor, and capital actually become physically embodied within the technology itself. Section 2. The ignition point and radiance. This is all about what happens when systems finally become self-sustaining. This is where the technology fundamentally alters the physics of our economy. The source points to this critical, fast-approaching threshold called the ignition point. It's a lot like how a star actually forms out in space, gathering mass and energy until, boom, it suddenly ignites and just shines for billions of years. Our energy and artificial labor systems are going to hit a very similar point. Once they're built, these stellar systems become self-sufficient, self-repairing, and self-improving forever. They'll just work for us continuously with absolutely zero X-flow. Literally, the only input needed is sunshine. And since the sun is, always shining, these systems are going to pump out an incredible amount of excess energy. Right now, your traditional utility companies look at excess solar power and see a huge liability because it totally breaks their old extractive business model. But in a stellar system, this superabundant energy is called radiance. It is not a liability. It is a massive revolutionary tool. We can take this essentially free, boundless energy and use it to actually restore the Earth and repair the damage caused by 10 millennia of extraction. If you are looking at the financial markets right now, the source gives us one single number that absolutely has to be your biggest takeaway: zero. Zero is the projected terminal value of the entire extractive flow over the next 10 to 20 years. For anyone investing in the old way, this is a massive wake-up call. Stellar systems aren't just, morally better. They are fundamentally economically superior. They're simply going to outcompete extractive systems and drive the value of those old X-flow assets straight into the ground. Moving on to Section 3, the Chimera Trap. This is where we look at the dangerous mismatch of new technology and old society. But okay, here is where we hit a really major hurdle. The source warns us about this concept called the chimera. Picture a caterpillar with wings, just sort of crudely glued onto it. A chimera is this completely dystopian scenario we get if we try to shoehorn beautiful new stellar technologies into our old extractive economic and political structures. Like, imagine if we keep our current extractive ideas of private ownership, right? We could easily end up in a total nightmare where just a handful of folks in Silicon Valley own the entire planet's artificial labor. We'd get literally all the disruption of the new tech with zero of the emancipating benefits. So to avoid that nightmare, we have to navigate 3 very distinct levels of change. Step 1 is technological. And the good news there is stellar tech is already winning hands down on pure physics and economics. But step 2 is economic and systemic change, which means we have to consciously redesign our society to dodge that chimera trap. And then there's step 3, which honestly might be the hardest: human consciousness change. This is where we have to deeply unpack and let go of the trauma and the rigid mindsets ingrained in us from thousands of years of extraction. This requires a massive fundamental shift in how we even approach problem solving. The source argues, pretty bluntly, that trying to make an extractive system a little less bad is essentially a complete waste of time. We aren't going to solve climate change or global inequality by just putting a band-aid on capitalism. And we for sure won't find the answers by bickering within our current political polarities, where one side wants to patch the system and the other wants to tear it down. We have to completely transcend that box to even see the new possibilities.
Section 4. Organizing a stellar world. Why change always comes from the edge.
So, practically speaking, how do we actually reorganize humanity to match these superabundant technologies? Well, there's a profoundly empowering realization in the text. Change always comes from the edge. Because of all the deeply entrenched interests and, the massive influence at the top of our current systems, we absolutely do not need, and frankly, we shouldn't wait for, permission from central governments to start building this new world. It's never the incumbents who lead the revolution. And because stellar technology is inherently distributed, this change can start completely locally, totally under the radar. A single community or a single city, whether that's in Ghana, Malaysia, Afghanistan, or your own backyard, can start building a stellar system today. And because it economically outcompetes the old system on a local level, it naturally triggers this massive worldwide cascade of change. It's brilliant because we don't have this impossible task of convincing 8 billion people to agree up front. We literally just need to prove it works in one place, and the idea will spread like wildfire. But getting there, our greatest hurdle isn't the hardware or the software. It's us. It is the sheer difficulty of unlearning 10,000 years of extractive thinking. And let's be real, that unlearning is incredibly tough for all of us. We have to completely let go of these mechanistic, centralized, hyper-hierarchical mindsets that we somehow tricked ourselves into believing were just permanent laws of the universe. They aren't constants at all. They were just our temporary adaptations to an era of scarcity. And that era is ending. Zooming out to an Earth system level, the stakes of this unlearning are absolutely massive. Extractive systems are strictly high entropy. They constantly chew up the Earth and generate more chaos. But stellar systems, they represent negative entropy. By taking energy entirely from outside the Earth system, the sun, and using it to organize and repair our planet, we actually reverse the decay. For scientists, this is a huge deal. It is the absolute non-negotiable mathematical prerequisite for any advanced civilization to stick around without completely destroying itself. Which brings us to the seriously mind-bending application of the whole concept, the Fermi Paradox. Think about the staggering, almost incomprehensible vastness of the universe. Why haven't we ever encountered extraterrestrial life? The source throws out a really compelling, kind of chilling answer. Maybe it's because all extractive civilizations inevitably collapse under the weight of their own high entropy. And only those rare few that make the conscious collective leap to a negative entropy stellar civilization actually survive long enough to reach the stars. So, ultimately, the choice is entirely ours. We can cling to the past and just collapse under the crushing weight of extraction, or we can actively, consciously choose to build a super abundant stellar civilization. I really hope this explainer has completely shifted how you view the future of our society, our technology, and honestly, our own potential. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. What are you going to unlearn today to help humanity make that leap to the stars?